when you ask what are you doing here in the fire service, what does that mean to you? Because I'll tell you what it means to me. First thing I think of is not like, oh, well, I do this because I want to save lives, although that comes with the job, right? If you ask a bricklayer, 3 different bricklayers, what are you doing? One of them's going to say, I'm making $5 an hour, right? What are you doing here? I'm making $5 an hour. The other one's going to say, what are you doing here? I'm laying brick. You ask the third one, what are you doing here? Oh, well, sir, I'm building the best castle that's ever going to be made in the entire history of the world, right? So when you ask me, what am I doing in law enforcement? I'm not going to give you the, I'm making $30 an hour. I'm not going to give you the, oh, well, I'm doing a job. I'm going to give you the, I'm here so I can build the best community that has ever been here in the entire world. 88 hours?
Last week was
It's
72.
the life of law enforcement or first responding in general.
No,
right?
it's just having 2 jobs.
Well, yeah. Isn't it like, at least you're working like a, I don't want to say a job, but you're doing a pretty hard job, working fast food, working with people literally every hour of your, whether it's fire or it's cooking sandwiches, you're working with people. And it's a hard thing. And I think both can translate to both. Have you noticed that? Maybe people skills in general?
Yeah, definitely the people skills and talking to people, because we're diving right into this.
Diving right in.
All right, so damn, I don't know where to start. So yeah, but I mean, the people skills definitely like translates over to the fire service, just because I'm doing I do multiple positions,
Right.
so I'll
Well,
do register.
I don't want to interrupt you. Sorry to interrupt you,
Go
but
ahead.
you worked like the food service before you worked fire. Would
Yeah.
you say that the food service helped you with your people skills in fire more than fire's helped you with people skills in food? Because for me personally, like the confidence of working with adults, my whole 12-hour shift, sometimes 16-hour shifts, has boosted my confidence in terms of talking to people at any point. Like I could have random conversations with people at the store now and not feel awkward just because I'm like, dude, I talk to ranges of people at work every day.
I say they both helped each other because, I mean, first of all, like working in fast food and working with talking to different people and like in constantly on the move, definitely, I was a shy person growing up. So it's definitely helped me grow out of my shell and learn how to talk to people.
Right.
And those skills translate over to the fire service, because when I'm talking to patients or talking to other people, I know how to have conversation. And then vice versa, how working in the fire service helps me with my second job, working like a restaurant, is, I don't know, it's just, I'd say like, how to explain it?
It's kind of like actually having that conversation, right? Like you understand where these people are coming from because you see not the same people, but in general, just people on a regular day-to-day basis, probably the happiest they're going to be because they come in at lunch to get food or dinner to get food. And then you deal with other people that are maybe not necessarily their best days or their best times, right? Oftentimes you're running into people's worst days.
Yeah.
That's our life, right? Like your life is you're dealing with people's worst days. So I would assume that you being able to see both sides, the regular person on a regular basis emotionally versus broken down, probably the worst they're going to feel in a long time. So yeah, that's interesting. But another thing that I was going to say is like, oftentimes firefighters work 2 jobs. I think it's because the pay isn't necessarily the best in first responding in general, but for firefighters, definitely not the greatest in a lot of areas.
I think it just depends on the department you're at and where you're located. I mean, bigger departments are going to be paid better, or compared to like a small rural town department.
Right, of course.
But I think firefighters have 2 jobs. It's just because of the work schedule. I mean, you have like a whole day off, and then that's what a lot of people do, like real estate or just do their own business on the side just to keep themselves busy and just to make a little extra money.
So if that's the case, why do they burn out so quickly? Because the burnout rate of a firefighter is like that. Is it just the emotional aspect, not necessarily the physical aspect? Because like I said, where I was going to go with that is I've talked to other fire instructors when I was at the academy, and a lot of them did like lawn businesses at some point of their day, right?
Yeah.
Like they would mow lawns on their days off because they would work at 24, go mow like 5 lawns, get some sleep, and then go work another 24, whatever it might be, right?
Yeah.
Whatever their schedule was. But they always burned out super quickly. And a lot of them, unfortunately, don't have much time after they retire.
I'm not sure why. I mean, there's numerous different reasons why people burn out. And obviously, like, having that extra job is just being a firefighter in the first place on itself is already a stressful and hard job. Well, not, it's taxing. I think it is a better word. It's mentally and physically taxing. I mean, depending on the department you're at, like some departments are busier than others. If you're at a slower department, obviously it's not going to be as taxing because you're not constantly going. But if you're like at a busy department, it's definitely mentally and physically taxing. I mean, I feel it. Like right now, I did not want to come in today. I'm not going to lie. I had a busy night. I got off this morning, didn't really get much sleep, and then went home. Yeah. Went home, took a quick 30-minute nap. Yeah. Now I'm here and I'm just good to go. I think it's just finding ways to decompress, and knowing yourself is very important as well. Like knowing ways, it's just like how you function and how your body works. Like some people, like when they get off, all you need is sleep and they're good to go.
Right. And then we're going to get into that too, because I saw some things that were really interesting to me in terms of like the mental health aspect and just the physical aspect in general of firefighting. But one thing I honestly thought of is I work 12-hour shifts overnight, right? Which to some people might be difficult. You work a 24-hour shift. And yes, people make the jokes that you get to sleep and hang out with your buddies. Yeah. But honestly, I feel like that's kind of worse, because I feel like if I were to go to sleep knowing that I could wake up at any point in the night, I'm not really going to be able to get sleep. You know, like I might be able to sleep for an hour or two, but it's really not quality. So it's more of just like a rest, right? Not actually like energy wise, you're getting your sleep and you're building it up. And oftentimes you're waking up, like you said, 8 times in the middle of the night.
I understand what you're saying. I was like that at first. I mean, I'm less than a year onto the job. I'm only I'm about 7 months in on the field. But at first, like my first couple of shifts, like at night, I would wake up at any little sound thinking it's a tone dropping. Just like if someone's phone vibrated, like I shoot up just because I don't want to oversleep the call, you know, like sleep through a call. I just didn't want to have that reputation or like have a bad name for myself just starting off as the new intern. So I started off in the intern position with the department I'm currently with. So like the first couple shifts were rough because at night I was just like waking up at every little call. And just for a little more detail, like at the firehouse I'm at, we sleep in one big open room, very traditional. Like we're not like, we don't each have our own room. It's just one big room, all the beds. So like it's very traditional, old style. And like you said, like I was not getting good sleep, but then like just as time went on, you get more comfortable, and the guys, at least at my department, they're not going to let you sleep through the call. They'll wake you up. So it's just like you rest, but then when you get waking up, you just kind of get used to it, honestly. Is the best way I could put it. You get used to it, and then you just, some nights you sleep all night, some nights you don't hit the bed once. It's just, it's out of your hands. So the way I look at it is like, it's out of my hands. I can't control how much sleep I'm getting tonight. I'm not going to worry about it when the call comes.
Control the controllables.
Yeah, I don't stress about. I used to stress about it really hard, and I used to be really anxious at first. But as time has gone on with me, the department, I've just learned it's out of my control. I can't control it. I could just be prepared for what comes, and then do my job and not mess up when the time comes and when it matters. But as long as how much sleep I get, I don't care. I'm up every call. Let's go.
Nice, dude. Yeah, when evil comes, you gotta serve, or when you need to help someone. So obviously we don't know who you are yet, and haven't even introduced the show yet. So this is On Duty Raw, and this is episode 2 here with Juan Garcia. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Who are you? Give me your pass down.
Well, as you introduced me, my name is Juan. I'm 21 years old. I've known Isaac for how many years now? 5, 6, 7? I don't know.
At least I think 6 or 7, right?
At least 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Like pretty much been talking. I just been on with the department for 7 months. Started off as an intern. My academy has EMT. You already gone through the course. It's going to be the same course. It's just going to be accelerated depending on the course you take.
Right.
And then you just, it's the same knowledge. It's the same information, and you just
Doesn't hurt to learn it twice.
Yeah, and then like it's more like a refresher as well. Like you get to like pick up on things that you might have missed the first time, and like, or if you didn't really understand the subject, and you go through it a second time, like, okay, now like I get it.
Right. Okay. So oftentimes in first responding in general, we'll stick with the fire side of it though. Presentation is a huge thing, and oftentimes, unfortunately, the academy is the best shape you're going to be. That's the best presentation you're ever going to have when you get out of the academy. That's how it works out for most people. How important would you say the presentation is, maybe just visually, of a firefighter in terms of the uniform and the way they show up?
I mean, it's very important. I mean, it's something that
Because I know you guys like pride on the cleanliness of your your
your
engines and your uniform.
mm-hmm. And then just like the small details is what matters.
Right.
Is something I was told a lot in the academy, and then as I living in the firehouse and experiencing the culture, I definitely agree. It's always the small details that matter, like just going and doing the extra mile. I know doing the extra mile and just really being just look professional. Definitely.
I like to say, when you look like you give a shit, other people give a shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you show up looking like a slob, people aren't going to take you
People
serious.
are going to tell. They're not going to take you serious.
Yeah.
And it's
a bad rep on the community in general.
Yeah, and then it might create a bad reputation on your name in the firehouse as well.
All right. That makes sense. One thing that I kind of thought of when you were explaining that was, I don't know how many years ago, I read it in actually Atomic Habits, one of the books back here.
Mm-hmm.
There was an English biking team. They sucked pretty much. And they were always trying to win this big European bike race. I don't know exactly what it's called. And they didn't know what to do. And eventually they were to a point where they weren't going to be a team anymore because they sucked so bad. But one coach came in and they decided to improve just one small detail every single day up until the race day, right? Small minor details as such as the way they stored the bikes, constantly keeping the storage of the bikes clean, maybe changing a certain rubber on the tires, certain gels that they use to massage their legs to recover faster, cold bath, ice bath, changing 1% every single day, the minor details, and it ultimately led to them winning multiple years in a row, right? Versus just focusing on the objective isn't going to get you anywhere. But when you make sure the system is built up on the minor details and you focus on those little things and you make sure that they're always perfect as can be, when the job comes to actually get to that objective, it's a lot easier. Would you say that's true?
Yeah.
That's why part of why you do that?
Yeah. I mean, it's just building that foundation. Like, the way you train is the way you're going to perform on the fire ground. I mean, don't train until you get it right once. Train until you can't get it wrong, and just continue building that.
Fail your way to success.
Just continue having that foundation of skills, because when you get that call at 3 a.m. and you're fumbling around doing whatever you got to do, I mean, you're just going to rely on your training, and then that's where muscle memory is going to kick in. And if you train till you can't get it wrong, you're going to perform that way on the fire ground compared to where you're trained, you got it right once, okay, I know how to do it, and then it's going to show.
So you and I absorbed our lives into bodybuilding for a while, right?
Yeah.
For a long time, we were really absorbed in the life of bodybuilding. I think because I understand it so much, I've been able to translate a lot of lessons I learned in the weight room to life. And one of those things is training to failure. And I think what people don't understand, if you go to the gym or if you've been to a gym before, you know what training to failure means, and you know why we need to do it. And I think people should translate that into all aspects of their life, but especially in this career. When you do your training, train until you can't get it wrong, right? Train to failure. Push yourself. If you fail at 10 reps, you fail at 10 reps. Next time, fail at 11. Fail at 12. Fail at 13. That way you continue to constantly get better until you're just doing 100 reps in a row, and it's like, shit, dude, like, I got this. But then at that point, don't sleep on it. Still keep touching up on it. Yeah. Keep doing those movements. But yeah, I've been able to translate a lot of that into life. So a little bit more on the presentation, though. More on the fitness aspect of it. I see a lot of people get comfortable in this field, and they start to let themselves go. Have you seen that personally? And maybe can you explain why?
Why? I'm not really sure. I think every person is different, has different goals, or they just hit a point in their career where, like you said, they get comfortable. Like, okay, like.
Because my thing is, I can't fathom necessarily the aspect of letting yourself get to a point where you can't physically do the job anymore when it could mean your life or someone else's. Even if you're in a higher position of, I don't know how the ranking system necessarily goes in fire, but and for us, sergeant, lieutenant, whatever it might be, especially the higher you get, the less that you really do physically. Do you think that's important to keep the fitness level up regardless?
I mean, I haven't seen that in any case, at least
where you work.
Where I work, I mean, for example, like my battalion chief, he's a chief, he does like more like office stuff, but he goes to the gym before every shift. He's there in the morning at 6:30, and he's already done his workout for the day.
Mm-hmm.
So he wakes up pretty early, and then obviously like when we have our night calls, he responds and all that as well. I honestly don't see that at my department. I'm not sure why would people would let themselves get to there. I mean, there's
Yeah.
laziness is the only
It's
thing I could think.
unfortunate.
Only thing I could think of, but
Yeah. So, given the physical aspect of it, and obviously we talked a little bit about the mental, which we'll get into more here in a bit. Would you say this job is more physical than mental?
it's both.
In maybe how much more than the other?
Physical as an aspect of like fighting fire and picking people up and moving them. Mental as in seeing the messed up calls, seeing the stuff that people don't want to see, and being able to be okay, like mentally be okay after that.
Right.
I think both is very important.
Even right now, obviously where fire is a little more higher in the summer,
Mhm.
you're probably getting a little more fire calls.
Mhm.
Is it still more of the mental because you're mostly responding to medical cases and people with a medical emergency?
I mean, those like bad medical calls that you get don't happen all the time. It's
Right.
every once in a while, depending on the area you work in. At least in my area, it's like the once every once in a while. It's not like every call is super messed up. You know,
Right.
like what am I seeing? You know,
Okay.
it's pretty mellow for the medicals at least. So I mean, it's a late fire season, and it's my first fire season, so I haven't really seen anything too big. I haven't gone on any strike teams where we work those long hours, but I could definitely see how when you reach the point of physical exhaustion, like, am I gonna break, or am I gonna keep going and keep working through it?
You would hope that the will to live there,
yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So actually, that kind of brought up a question that I thought about earlier. We often talk about in this realm of life, putting your brothers first.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to those tough calls, right, I don't think civilian people necessarily understand the fact that we are willing to go back in and save our people more than we are regular people. Does that make sense? How true is that to you?
100%. I mean, if one of my brothers goes down and it's them or a civilian to say, I'm 100% picking them. That's just
Right.
That's just the way it is.
And there's logical reasons to that, right?
Mhm.
It's not necessarily totally emotional, but I think the aspect to that is if you let that one firefighter die, now the hundreds of lives that he would have saved later on in his career are also going to go, right?
Mhm.
So saving him in general is more acceptable. Is that what you would say?
That, and it's just I know. I mean, I know this person. Like I
Right.
live with this. I spend more time with this person than I do my own family.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's definitely emotional as well.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I always used to wonder that when I wasn't part of this life, I was questioning why they would do something like that. But now that I'm in it, I can see it 100%,
Mhm.
and it's something that you don't understand. You might think we're messed up, whatever it might be. You don't understand until you're put into that position.
And one thing is like, I spend more time with these guys than I do my own family.
Yeah.
I eat more dinners, breakfast, lunches with them. I spend a whole day I'm with them.
You're
More
right.
than I see them more than my own family. So they are my family at this point.
Right.
So I mean, I do anything for them.
It's the natural response as part of the pact, right?
Yeah.
To save your people first. It makes sense to me. It came up in my head right now. So, what does a typical day look like in your 24-hour shift? Explain this to someone who's maybe just coming on. They're barely getting their first firefighter job.
So, first things first is I'll get there an hour early before my shift starts.
An
hour.
Okay.
You don't if you're early. Here's the saying: if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. And
An
if you're
hour?
late, you don't show up. An hour.
Okay.
So I'll get there an hour early. I have my bags. I'll bring my bags in, set them in the dorms. Say good morning to everyone as I enter, and then I'll go grab my Minotaur, which is like a little, how to explain it? It's a pager that goes off when we get toned out for calls.
Okay.
So I'll grab that. I'll go grab my gear, set it out in the apparatus bay, set it out. So just in case if we get a call, it's because we have a upstairs where we store our gear. It's downstairs. It's right there. I could just grab
Ready to
it,
go.
throw it on, or grab it, throw it on the engine, and hop on.
Okay.
If needed. So I'll do that. I'll say good morning to everyone, and then I'll start off with the morning chores. So I'll check in with the crew coming off and like see if they need help getting any morning chores done that are done before pass on. Because, sometimes you get swamped during the day and you end up the morning of when you get off having to catch up on reports if you don't get it done the day before, or if you have a really busy night, the morning of when you get off, you're doing reports. So if they're busy doing reports, I'll take care of the morning chores, which is like just like putting the dishes away from the night before.
The regular keep up, right?
Put the dishes away. I'll fill up, like we have ice chests in all the engines, so I'll dump out the old warm water and then just fill it up with ice and put new water in it. I'll do that for all the engines and even like the chief rigs.
Right.
After that, I'll clean the bathrooms. So I'll go around cleaning the bathrooms, restocking toilet paper, towels, and like the hand soap dispensers. I'll refill those.
Right.
So
when you're not doing the actual calls, right, the cool stuff that everyone thinks they're gonna do all day long, you're just doing like housework.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's just daily chores, day cleaning. The department I work at, we're very hands-on and do a lot of projects, so that's really nice because I'm not mechanically inclined at all.
Yeah.
But I've learned a lot and I'm learning a lot, which is really nice. The guys there are really welcoming and really like, if you take the initiative and show that you want to learn, they'll take you in and teach you, which is really good, and I appreciate that a lot.
Right. So
I'm always grateful for that.
Yeah. I've noticed that in parts of my career as well. So I really like that you're sharing that, and that's actually exactly what I wanted to get, because I think when people that don't know anyone in the fire service, which you didn't know before, right?
I did not know anyone.
But I'm assuming that's most people. So when they go in, a lot of them, I would say, are gung-ho, right? They're like, I can't wait to go fight fires all day, go out there and save lives. And then they come into a job or a department like yours, and they realize that they have to do regular chores. How do you think that might feel for someone who's super gung-ho? Or did you have that feeling?
Honestly, I was very shy and timid.
So you were just like, fuck it, I'll do whatever?
That's how I still am. I'll do whatever, and they tell me to do something, I'll do it without hesitation, no questions asked. You give me a task, I'll do it.
You're the new boot.
Yeah, I'm not probie because I'm not hired on, but I was just the intern, doing what's expected of me and trying to accomplish more than what they expect.
Your stripes. Yeah, that's all it is.
Yeah, just being the new guy. For me, I was just shy and timid. I was quiet because just it differs from department to department. Every department has different culture and the way they treat their new people. But my department is very laid back and welcoming, and they make you feel welcomed, which is, there's not a lot of hazing going on. Yeah, they'll joke around and they'll make fun of you, make jokes, but it's not anything to where it hurts my feelings, or it's just all part of it's just part of that brotherly bond that you're forming.
Like genuine bullying. There's no like.
Yeah, there's no like, not anything bad, or at least any stories that like I've heard of, at least that what used to go down. But I was very shy and timid, and like I was a fly on the wall. I would ask what needed to be done, and they tell me, and I get it done. And then once you learn what your place is and what you're supposed to do, you just kind of stop asking, and you do what's done, and then you just like help out with projects and stuff like that.
All right, taking the initiative and your roles and helping others.
I think taking the initiative is very important, and don't be lazy. That's a big thing in a lot of like the people our age. That's people our age they tend to be more lazy and more like not want to do things, get their hands dirty. And
are people you work with surprised, given your age, how mature and kind of, how would I say it, disciplined you are?
No, because I feel like I feel like everyone else is on the same level. If you want to do this as your career,
right? I get that part. They should expect you to be that way, right? But at the same time, seeing men and women our age, it's almost shocking when you see someone as mature and disciplined as you are, wouldn't you say? And the only reason I say that is because I noticed it where I work. People oftentimes forget there's a few young guys. I'm the youngest guy on the crew. I'm only 20, and I hang out with all the 30-plus-year-olds, right? 40-year-olds.
Yeah.
And oftentimes they've told me that they forget how young I really am. That they think I have an old soul, is what they call it, right? Like they oftentimes believe that I'm 30 or even older, although I clearly look younger, just based off the way that I act compared to the other young guys that are in our department who are still growing and maturing a little bit more.
I mean, mature-wise, I definitely see the difference between them and me. The older guys, I'm not as matured and not as seasoned as they are, obviously. But I think that just comes with time.
Okay.
I mean,
that makes sense.
I think it just comes with time and living life.
Living.
Yeah. And experiencing.
Well, a job like that is definitely going to grow you a lot faster. I feel like in the past year, in the setting that I've worked, I've matured. Dude, it genuinely feels like at least 3 years.
It should.
Right? Like, I feel like I went from 19 to 25, like, within a year. It's crazy how it works. And it's inevitable. You can't really go around that. So if you're not ready for that, don't do it. You know, if you're going to get into this field around this age and you're still in that, I mean, don't get me wrong, you can still have a good time. You can still go out with friends and have fun, but you're going to get put into schedules that you're not always going to have the choice to get, right? Especially in my job, you don't really get to pick, especially in your first, like, year or two.
Yeah.
You don't really have a choice. You're going to work the shit into the stick.
Yeah.
And you got to be ready to do things like that. You got to be able to come in on days off. You got to be ready to go in and do trainings when you don't have to do the trainings, but taking that initiative to go do those things and taking that time to invest in yourself so you don't die, right? That's mainly the main thing. So you don't die and so your brothers don't die. You're continuing to get better and taking that time to get better. You got to be able to put that first before you go out there and put your social life. And you can still have a social life because I know you've been able to balance that. I know you, there's often times where you won't always have that balance.
Yeah, and it's a lot of missed family parties, vacations, birthdays, anniversaries. I mean, I've just started and I've already missed a lot of things, and it's something I knew that was going to happen going into it. I accepted it, and I'm okay with that.
I think it's good to understand that most people also understand, right? When you're in this job, they're like, okay, I get it. You know, he's out there.
Then, like I said, like your brothers at work, they are in the same boat as you. They understand, and
not alone.
That's a great resource to use. I mean, I use them a lot, and I rely on them for like advice on how to approach things, how to tackle things in life. I mean, they've been in the same situation that I am, and they are excellent resources, honestly.
So up to this point, I would say that it's important, given what you've already told me, it's important to ask the right questions or ask questions at all, right? Don't feel dumb asking questions.
There's no such thing as a dumb question.
It's dumb to not ask the question.
Yeah, it's better to ask a million questions and have you understand what's going on and what you're doing and the reason, the whys behind it. Because when it matters out in like when you're out on the job and doing it, like you know what you're doing.
And it could mean life.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah.
And then it's just better that you understand. I mean, when I started off, I was asking 1,000 questions every day. Why this? Why that? Just to understand the reasoning behind it.
And someone who actually cares, they're not going to laugh. You know, even at the simplest question, right? They're going to explain it to you with passion, right? And I feel like a lot of the guys where you work are like that.
Yeah.
I don't know who said this quote, and I don't really know it exactly, but it goes something like, if you ask a dumb question once, they'll laugh at you for a second. If you don't ask the question at all, you're going to be a fool for eternity, right? So it's important to ask questions. Oftentimes, there's a lot of fear associated with the jobs that we do. You know, going into a burning building, going out there to save a kid from a car crash, whatever it might be. There's some scary things that we have to put ourselves in front of to save random people that we don't even know. Would you be able to describe that fear of maybe going into a burning building or having that life or flight, that flight instinct turned on or survival instinct turned on to actually save someone that you don't even know?
I think it's a big adrenaline rush, honestly, is what is a big part of it. But I think one major thing is I'm young, so I don't really care.
Right.
At the end of the day, compared to someone who's older and who has kids and like, oh, like, am I really gonna like? I mean, they're gonna do it at the end of the day, but they'll probably think twice compared to me, who's like, oh, like
nothing to lose. In a
sense. I have nothing to lose in a sense. I mean, I have like my family, but I don't have any kids. I don't have a wife.
Yeah.
I won't think twice about it, but I think at that aspect is just relying on your training and listening to what orders you're given and doing your job is the biggest thing. I mean, I'm an overthinker.
Right.
I'm 100%. I overthink everything, but Anxious, yeah, I get anxious. I mean, a little
You
nerve
never
right.
know.
I get a little nervous, but I think that's just because how new I am. And
I think
then
that's also human instinct, dude. You know, I don't think
mhm,
no one should want to run into a burning building. I know sometimes firefighters talk about like, oh, you love structure fires, all that,
mhm.
but you inside you don't want to run into that building because you know at any point
uh
it could at any point
yes,
that building
you're
could fall or you can.
yeah.
You've talked about those weird spiral fire things to me before. They can kill you in like seconds, or you get trapped in whatever it might be. I get the adrenaline part of it, but deep down inside, there's always that I might not come out of this.
There's many factors that play into it. At like, I mean, you're not gonna run into every burning building. You have to be smart. You know, you have to read the building.
Right.
What is this building gonna do? Is it gonna collapse? We're not gonna enter if it's gonna collapse.
Right.
Stuff like that. I mean, just those calls are made by, you know, like your captain, or if your chief is on scene, your
Okay.
chief or battalion chief, whoever is the IC, is gonna make those calls. But that's what I mean. You're always I mean, that's what they're there for, but you know, you're also keeping an eye out. You're also looking at the environment, what you're doing. You're being observant and aware of what's going on just in case, because those are dynamic situations, and dynamic situations are constantly changing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you always have to be aware of what's going on and like understand fire behavior and all that. But for me, it's more like I don't get scared. It's more the fact that am I gonna fuck up? Like, am I gonna do this wrong? Like, I just where I that's where I'm like, just because I'm green, I'm gonna mess up. I've
Okay.
messed up, but I think that's what's being new is just messing up, learning um from my
Learning from those
mistakes,
mistakes,
and then becoming better, not dwelling on it. That's something a firefighter
yeah.
has.
Right.
Uh, one of my senior firefighters told me, he's like, you make a mistake, don't dwell on it, because that will eat you up.
Yeah.
And then,
One thing I've noticed is that fear kills more people
mhm,
than action. So
mhm,
actually taking that action will save lives.
mhm,
Sometimes it might get you killed. Sometimes it might get someone hurt. Sometimes you might make a mistake.
mhm,
But not doing anything at all because of fear or running in and doing it anyway because even though you're scared and
mhm.
timid can get you really hurt.
And I think
Yeah.
if you're scared and timid, that's just gonna get, like you said, it's gonna get you hurt as well.
Yeah.
I think that's just where that muscle memory and relying on your training comes in place, because at
Right.
that point you're thinking, but you're just, I don't know how to explain it. It's like you're going through the motions. You're like, okay, like it's funny because things that were instilled in me from my academy, I say it to myself when I'm pulling hose,
Right.
when I'm about to, you know, masking up. I'm like, okay, my seal's good, this and this. I'm like checking things off, and then asking for water. Water's coming to my
Mm-hmm.
to my line, and I'm like, okay, now I'm ready to go. Like, I'm ready to enter. And it's just funny because of like those like academy habits, like that's where that training and that muscle memory comes in place. And then new habits I picked up being at my department,
It's
that
fully trusting those things too.
hmm
Yeah.
like new habits I picked up from being at the department, things that those guys have showed me that I didn't learn in the academy, little tips and tricks,
Right.
helps out as well, and just continue building up my foundations and really growing my skill set.
Okay. At what point would you cut someone off though because of fear? Because in the army, right, their parachuting teams, I don't know what it's called. Their parachute team,
Like the PJs.
yeah.
Okay.
So when you're going through the training and stuff, obviously you have to jump out of a freaking airplane.
Yeah.
The first time, if you're too scared and you don't do it, they give you a pass. But the second time, they cut you off completely because they're saying if you're not going to do it the second time, you're not going to do it ever.
hmm
Would you say that's true in fire? Maybe someone gets too scared, they don't act, you give them a second chance, then how many chances do you really give them before you're like, okay, you're not cut out for this?
I'm not really too sure. I haven't experienced.
You don't have to give like an exact number. I'm just mean more
Yeah.
like there is a point where it's like, hey, like you might need to reconsider.
I think that's a pretty good question. I'm not really sure. I haven't seen that or experienced that personally.
Right.
It just depends how bad you mess up. Like, you really not got to know what you're doing to get that point. Like, it's
Okay.
not that complicated.
I just mean more of like the fear aspect. Like you freeze and it's like, hey, Juan, run into the building and you're just like frozen. You know, I'm sure there's going to be
Yeah.
a stern talking to, but what about the second time? You know,
I think the second time, I think probably reconsider what you're doing if you're that scared. But
yeah,
I don't think I've ever heard of anyone being that scared or
right.
that, because usually people in this field are go-getters, and like they see it, they're
Right.
gonna do it. They're not gonna
It's just those certain
They're not gonna
people.
hesitate.
What I think of is like you think, like you said, you think you know what you're gonna be doing
Mm-hmm.
until you see that burning building,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, never mind,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because obviously you train in the academy, but it's all controlled.
Yeah.
Now when you're out there in the field, it's not so controlled. Depending how big it might be,
Mm-hmm.
you just never know. And I think the first time you see something that massive, for example, it's a bad, I don't want to say it's a bad example. It's a good example, but it's a bad time in our history. But 9/11, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anyone would have ever expected that to happen.
No.
But those firefighters that were running into the building, I don't believe there's any that were scared to run into the building. But imagine that, right? Imagine having to run into that building and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this is what I signed up for,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like this is as worse as it gets. That's kind of like the example I was trying to get to, but we'll move on from that. I think it's important. What I got from that is typically if you're going into this field, you shouldn't be the fear and timid type. Although fear is real, you have it, but it's actually attacking that and being that go-getter that's gonna creating that action that's gonna kill that fear.
I think, like I've said multiple times, I think that training is just relying on that training. I mean, you always revert back to your training.
But how much training are you really getting? Because I know you obviously have the academy. It's a few months long. How often are you training on the job?
On the job, I mean, we work on different training scenarios, shift to shift. Like we'll do different things.
Because I know the funding isn't very great. That's what I was trying to get at. Like you don't have any like structured training, right? Like you guys go out to courses or a different department to learn or whatever it might be.
That will vary from department to department, but like we'll like obviously like pull lines, and then you'll work on like pulling hose and strategies and like movement and ways to attack it, and like we'll also do like scene size ups, and like we'll pull up an image from Google and like, okay, what would you do in this situation, and like you'll like explain, and then your captain will listen to you like what your thought process, and then you'll listen to like everyone else's thought process, and like two people could have like two different methods of attacking it. Both are not wrong. I mean, both are right. It's just different ways to skin the cat. It's just
Okay. So you guys been able to manage the training pretty well.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Do you think more funding would help? You guys would do
definitely
maybe
like
do cooler stuff?
Definitely like more props and stuff like that. Like
right.
A roof prop would be pretty cool. Practice like doing like roof ventilations, but at my department, we don't go on the roof all that often. To be honest, we just attack the seat of the fire and then put it out. But I mean, yet again, we don't have the houses in our jurisdiction are pretty small, so it's not like we're finding anything too big.
Yeah. It's just because oftentimes I know in law enforcement, the controversy is finding enough funding, right? Enough training. Although they don't give us enough funding for training, they want us to train more. And it's kind of scary, the minimal requirements of training that goes into law enforcement. Now, oftentimes you see departments just meeting the minimum standards.
Do you think that's because it's just the lack of the size of the department and like the size of the city?
I think it's the lack of people, necessarily the publicity of it, right? Like the states don't want to give this money necessarily all the time because people won't support it, right? I think there's more people out there that do support it, but let's face it, it's the people that don't support it that are actually speaking out than the people that do support it, right? You get the few people like you and I, our family members that do support law enforcement and would back them, but oftentimes you don't get those people talking out loud, right? Wanting to go to events and generate money for these departments. And that's why we lack a lot of that training. It's also really expensive, and it's hard to find that funding. And we can't get that funding without people supporting it. We just don't have that vocal voice, which hopefully what we're doing here, right?
Yeah.
We're creating that vocal voice for people like you to hopefully bring more attraction to our community and then give us some more training so we don't die. Okay. So I kind of want to wrap this up, bring this more to a little bit of a conclusion. You're really early on into your career.
Yeah.
Less than a year. I don't know what you see in the future. We don't know what might happen. But as of right now, what does 10 years from now look like? Are you going to be a leader in some aspect of the job? Are you going to just be, I don't want to say just, but is there a certain position where you want to be in? Because I don't know if you watched Maverick. You did watch Maverick, right? How when they talked to him in that one scene where they're like, hey, you could be like a 2 or 3 star admiral right now. And he walks out of the office saying, I'm a pilot, right? Even though he's been there for decades, he's a pilot. Do you think that's kind of where you're at maybe not yet, but you see yourself in that position where like, this is what I want to do. I want to be an engineer. This is what I want to do.
Honestly, I haven't put that much thought into it. I
Mhm.
just been just trying to grow and build my foundation as best as I can right now, and just being a little bit better every shift. I haven't looked into that far and decided like, oh, I only want to be this, or oh, I want to be this. I just taking it as it comes, and
Would you take that leadership position if it comes up?
if I'm qualified, if I believe I'm qualified for it, yes.
Right.
But
So what would that mean though? Do you think leaders are born or made? Do you think you get build up to that point, or do you think there's people that just aren't cut for it in general?
I think it's a bit of both. I
Okay.
think it just depends on your personality, and then obviously the leadership role comes with time and experience on the job.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I think it's both for sure.
Okay. One of the big things that I've seen that I kind of want to get your perspective from is getting help in this field,
Mhm.
right? And oftentimes there's a lot of stigma in the field that we're in terms of getting help in maybe the things that we see on a day-to-day basis and overall mental health, right? I saw some pretty scary statistics when I was doing some research, and it's 47% of firefighters specifically. We're not even counting EMTs or law enforcement. 47% of firefighters consider suicide
Mhm.
throughout their career. 19% make a plan. And these are 2019 facts, by the way. So
Yeah.
they're not even necessarily up to date. And 16% followed through with it. Obviously, we talked about the emotional and the physical aspect, but to me, it sounds like this job considers a lot more emotional aspect than physical
Mhm.
when it comes to it. Obviously, you need the physical to
Yeah.
come through and do the job properly, but emotionally, I think there's a lot of back end things that we don't do to actually be better. What is your department doing right now to maybe better that aspect of it?
So, I think my department's pretty good. The guys are really open about talking about mental health. A lot of guys are open to it. No
Right.
one's like closed off. Our chief is
Well, that's
both our
good.
chiefs are really good, and everyone's super open, which is amazing because
That's rare, I think, in
yeah,
a lot of places, actually.
I think in recent times with all this um stats coming up, I think a lot more departments are being pushing with more mental awareness. And
Right.
recently, in my academy, it was pushed on us from the beginning. Like take care of your mental health and all that. It was constantly said throughout our academy, which is, I mean, the academy is where you start.
Right.
So just hearing about that was you get exposed to it and you're like, okay, like you hear it, and then you get on the job and you start to understand, you start seeing those messed up things, and you start
Mhm.
and you start to process it. Me, I mean, I'm still learning how to recover and how to like
Cope with it.
cope with it,
Yeah.
just because of how new I am.
'Cause you talked about it earlier, right? We get into this job to help people.
Mhm,
The last thing we want to do is get out of this job needing help.
mhm,
So we want to do our best we can to fix that in the actual act of doing the job, right?
mhm.
Throughout your career and getting better. Can you see this in yourself already? In the things I know you were just talking about how you're finding ways to cope with it.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about it a lot with the guys. Like after we have a bad call, we'll sit down, have a talk about it, and let it out the day of or the day after.
It's good. The faster you do it, the better.
Yeah.
Letting it soak.
And then like even if I still need to talk about it, which has happened to me, I've talked to
Yeah.
even like weeks after a call, I've had to talk to some guys about it still who were on the call with me, and
Mm-hmm.
they still sat down, talked to me, and really just let it out, which is great. I'm always super grateful for that. Um, Even then, like I noticed, like I follow a lot of like social media pages, and a lot of like social media pages are starting to push more mental health awareness and
It's good.
like lines and ways to get help and ways
Mm-hmm.
to notice signs of being burnt out and
Mm-hmm.
stress and accumulation and all that. Even my department has like we'll put out like websites of like, oh, like are these signs, and like we'll have trainings on them as well, like make sure you're okay.
Yeah. That's good that you guys are adapting to that because
Mhm.
unfortunately a lot of people aren't focusing on that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's becoming more present, like you said, especially in smaller communities like this. With the bigger cities, unfortunately, are not catching up, which I don't know why, because they have more money than us.
I feel like, I mean, from what I've noticed, I feel like in the fire side, I feel like those bigger communities have been noticing and like have been proactive.
Slowly, but I think
Yeah.
these smaller communities are kind of, because they're, like you said, they're a lot more closer. It's more of a brotherly bond rather than a lot of these bigger cities are more of like fat paychecks, right? They don't really, they're like, fuck, I don't care what I saw today. I'm getting a nice check, right? Do you think that's the case in some places?
Some places, yeah, but I don't think every department is like that.
Oh, no, of course, no, because yours is a good example of how it's not. I think I'm going to ask you a couple more questions just because I want to pick your mind a little bit more. But before we get into that, because I'm not going to take up too much of your time, you talked a little bit on decompression. And I think it's important that we touch on that just for anyone getting into the service, or maybe someone who hasn't thought about it, who's already years into it. What is your magic chair is what it's called. Like, what is your, this is how I decompress. You said some people sleep. Like for me, on graveyard shift, I could come home and just go straight to sleep and wake up and be okay, right? On day shift, I like to come home and like either work out or read. That's kind of like my magic chair.
For me, I don't really have like a specific thing. For me, as long as I get, what helps me the best is just getting my mind off of things. And like if it's something bad, I'll talk about it and get it out. But it's just like being active. I don't really care what it is. It's just as long as I'm out playing sports, working out, like
something that actually requires your mind to go do something.
As long as
I feel that there. Yeah,
I feel like that's what works best with me. I haven't really nailed down exactly what, but everything like
it doesn't always have to be something specific. You
No,
know, it's just for a lot of guys like tradition. You know, it's like a lot of males would come home, sit on the couch, especially in the old days, turn on the sports channel and sit there for an hour and watch sports. Right before they can even function. Right before they can even have a genuine conversation with someone. They need to like sit there and just get their mind completely off of things.
Actually, now that you mentioned that, I don't know why I just not realized this, but one thing for sure is a must for me is music and sitting in my car. I don't know what it is. Like on the car ride home, I'll listen to music, just decompress, and then once I get home, I'll sit in the car 10, 15 minutes, 30 minutes sometimes, and just sit there in silence. And I just kind of gather my thoughts, just kind of leave work at work, and then try to bring home and just try to leave that at work as much as I can. And then I'll get down. Then I'll start bringing down my stuff.
I love that you said that, just because the 30 minutes specifically of silence, right?
I need that. That's a must for me.
That 30 minutes of silence is so important because as humans and as males, we need to be able to like think, like really deep think about what we're thinking about in that moment. Because I don't want to speak for you, but for me, when I get off work, I feel like I have like 120 tabs open. Like I'm just like cluttered sometimes.
I
and I need to sit there and close those tabs. Like what do I need to keep open? What don't I need open? Because my mind is just like fuzzy is how I can explain it. And you need that time to think.
Yeah.
Deep think and quiet.
And for me, like as an intern, I was working 48s. So I mean, that was just like I would like sit there in my garage, because I parked my car in the garage. I sit there and then I would just reflect on my shift. Like, okay,
it's good.
How did I do? And then just reflect like, what could I improve on? Did I put my 110%? Did I check off all my boxes? I was just trying to like reflect and go through. I'm like, okay, what can I do better next time?
Right. Thinking. I think people really underestimate, just because personally, I think it's like 90% of it. I really do. I think thinking and theory is 90% of the equation. The other 10% is actually acting, which that 10% is a lot more dense and is really important, because without the action, the thinking is pointless. But you're someone who takes that into action, you know, not just sit there and think all day, but you need that thinking time.
Yeah, it's definitely needed. And then I just kind of like ground myself and think, okay, what do I need to do like now, my time off? And then I got my second job. Okay, I got work from this to this. Okay, can I squeeze a workout in before work? Can I get a meal in? Okay, I don't have time for a meal. I just have to work out fasted. Like, just stuff like that.
I feel it. Cool. All right, so we're going to bring this to a quick close. We'll make this like a 5-minute conversation. Okay. What you would do this. Think of these people. I'm going to give you an example of certain people and give the best advice you can, okay? Advice for people considering this job.
I think I love this career. It's a fantastic career to get into, but it's definitely not for the money. It's for the passion.
There's better things you could do for money. Right?
Yeah, there's way better things you could do for the money. I think it's definitely for the passion and feeling, because I knew I wanted to join a career where I would feel satisfied and feel like I'm making a difference, and this is definitely a career to consider if you're thinking about doing it.
People in the academy.
just keep your mouth shut, do what you're told, get your work done, take care of yourself, prioritize sleep, and then just get in shape.
So like kind of kick ego out the door and
Yeah,
just
kick ego out the door, leave it out,
right.
and just go in there.
I think for me,
Be
it was
humble.
one of those hard things at first. I mean, I've been able to manage it for the past couple of years,
Mhm.
but being an athlete and knowing that I was at least a decent athlete, I always walked into certain buildings like knowing that like, yeah, I got this. Like I could do this. Like I always let my athletics carry me in all aspects of life.
Mhm.
And there's times where I realize that that's not always the case.
Mhm.
Now you have to kick that ego out the door and learn. People looking for work. So kind of out of the academy.
Well, I'm in that situation, so
You got a job.
not full time.
I get it, but you know,
Yeah,
just
I'm
looking for a department
Just-
is how I should say. What should they look for in terms of culture and environment?
I mean, I definitely like would do ride-alongs with departments that you're hiring,
There
do
you go.
station visits, so they could have a name to the face and they could
Mhm.
kind of get to know you if you're going through the process with them.
Get that vibe.
And then just go to these different departments, do different ride-alongs, and see which kind of department fits you. I mean, you may get it, you may not.
Mhm.
That's just kind of like that's what you want the job.
Yeah.
And if you get it, phenomenal. Freaking congrats. But I think just keep chipping away at it. Just keep applying, keep applying, keep applying, keep
Okay.
trying.
What advice would you give to anyone in a leadership position? I know you love your leaders that you have now, your chiefs,
Mhm.
and all of that. Say they weren't the best. What do you look for in a leader, and what should someone else look for in a leader?
Someone who's calm, cool, collected, like someone who's not just like yelling out things just to yell out
Mhm.
things and are all clustered up or
Right.
like, does that make sense?
Maybe if like you could tell that they're not really enjoying it, right? Like
Not
they're
enjoying
super,
it, but like just like stressed out, and like, cause like if
Right.
a leader's stressed out, it's gonna show, and then the crew's gonna
Yeah.
feel it, like just being cool, calm, collected.
because leaders are the example, right?
Mhm.
So if
Just, like,
they're
lead by ex-
everywhere, the team is everywhere.
Yeah, just lead by example. I don't know. I just think everyone in my department does a pretty good job, so it's kind of
You've been fortunate to have a really good experience.
yeah. I've been pretty
Yeah.
fortunate and pretty grateful for that.
That's awesome. Well, Juan, that's all I have for you today. I appreciate your
you.
time, and I'm sure anyone watching this or listening to this appreciates it as well. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you, and I hope to have you again a couple years down the road when you're a lot more experienced, you have a lot more stories to tell. And this was great, dude. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right.
Adios.